podcast. We are a giggly bunch today out here at TCO Performance Center. I'm Emily Leiker, Ben Goessling, Andrew Krammer, all of us of the Minnesota Star Tribune. We're going to talk about some injuries that came out today in Kevin O'Connell's press conference, what everyone said about the look back at the Bears game after watching film, and then, of course, look ahead to Sunday night, the home opener at US Bank Stadium when the Falcons come to town to play the Vikings. First off, injuries. We heard that linebacker Blake Cashman and then also running back Ty Chandler are expected to miss some time. How much? It did not seem like there is an answer to yet, as well as outside linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel and cornerback Jeff Okudah are in the concussion protocol after the other night. Let's start with Blake Cashman. Obviously, that's the biggest one here. Yeah. Ben, he was injured last year. They had to adjust to not having him last year, I guess. What did they do then, and what would you expect them to do this year with him expected to be out?
Well, they struggled a lot last year when they didn't have him. And those first games he missed were the ones that they lost to the Lions and the Rams. And you could see that it was a lot different in their defense without him, both in terms of blitzes. He wears the green dot, so in terms of coordinating things in the defense, he disguises things awfully well. And I think they missed his presence in that regard. I think Eric Wilson this year probably helps a little bit in that sense. Yep. And they have a little more depth across the board. Ivan Pace is a year more experienced. You have Dallas Turner playing a larger role. But I think it's a big loss for them to not have Cashman. And the way O'Connell talked about it today, when he's saying the timeline is still debatable or is still up in the air, and then what we're going to possibly do roster-wise, I think he alluded to, that all sounded to me like injured reserve is not out of the question. Because if you look at the timeline of it, you've got 4 games until the bye, right? So we've got Falcons, the Bengals, and then the 2 international. So if you were to put him on injured reserve, you keep him out through the bye week, and that should give him plenty of time. I would not be surprised if they said, you know what, let's just shut this down. It's a hamstring. Let's not mess with it. And just give him through the bye week to get it healthy rather than trying to rush him back.
Wow, that would be a big loss if they had him. And you mentioned the issues they had last year without him. Yeah. With those games when he had the turf toe injury, he's just so versatile and such a prized piece of that defense communication-wise, relaying the play calls. But they are set up better to not have him this year than they were last year because of Eric Wilson. Yeah. It stood out to me that in Chicago, when Cashman went out, they gave Wilson the green dot, not Ivan Pace. So they had basically Wilson step into Cashman's role, kept Pace doing what he does. Last year, who was it? Camus Grugier-Hill? Was he the one stepping in?
Played quite a bit.
And it was Josh Metellus that they forced kind of at linebacker for him as well.
And Grugier-Hill actually was earlier than that. I think Pace got hurt because I think Grugier-Hill had the picks against the Texans, which would have been before Cashman got hurt. I think he ended up kind of playing for both of them, but his best work was probably actually in Pace's place. Hard to say.
Yeah, and Wilson's just been more of that proven starter in the NFL. He's done it for many teams, including the Vikings, back when Barr and Kendricks would get hurt and miss games at times. So I think they're better suited to do it now, but you just don't want to lose the guy who he was their answer to spying Caleb Williams. He was the guy who kind of mirrored Caleb, and you could say it didn't work out too well at times for him because he got hurt chasing him. But it would be a big loss regardless. I just feel like they're at least a little better suited to handle it.
Eric Wilson did say in the locker room today that he expects to be the one to continue with the green dot helmet over the next couple games. Said he's totally comfortable with that, has done it before, obviously, like we just said, did it the rest of the other night. Ty Chandler is a knee injury, Kevin O'Connell said. He did stay in through the end of the game, but he was lumped in that kind of comment about, well, we'll see what we'll do with the roster spot. I'd expect them back, but we don't know when. The concussion protocol for Van Ginkel and Okudah was news, I think, to us. Andrew, I know you talked to Dallas Turner a little bit in the locker room about, is this a moment where you're going to be called upon a little bit more? Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what happens, how Van Ginkel or Okudah could progress. We knew Okudah was in the concussion protocol after the game, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think O'Connell mentioned it after the game that he was being tested for, that he was doing okay.
We didn't know that about
short term. Van Ginkel, that's news today.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Like, were these symptoms that like prolonged and popped up later on Tuesday and he got checked? Like, why didn't we know that right away? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how he practices, if he practices at all this week. Dallas Turner, if he starts, this would be his first start since he was at Alabama. Has obviously not started in the NFL, yet his highest play percentage in a single game remains the first game he's ever played for the Vikings, 49% in New York. He played about 47% in Chicago. So they've kept him at that like half kind of rate. This would jump to 70, 80% if he's the guy, because behind him is Bo Richter.
Yeah, I would think you're going to hand him the reins, and he's going to be a big part of it. I think that's maybe end up what we see, just because we're a short week here, too, with Van Ginkel trying to get back in time. You got to walk through today, and then probably practices Thursday, Friday. So, yeah, I think it's very possible with the quick turnaround that they don't have Van Ginkel Sunday night, which would mean a bigger role for Dallas Turner in what is kind of turning into the 2024 CFP reunion game between he played J.J. McCarthy, and then McCarthy played Penix in the national title game.
Yeah, we should note, too, Dallas did talk about being more comfortable this year compared to last year, and just physically he looked like a different player out there and was making a little bit more of an impact than what we're used to seeing. Not any splash plays, didn't have the pick like he did in Seattle last year, but he did seem better suited to handle this role than if they would have asked him to do it as a rookie.
You know, the one thing that, and this could not have an impact on it at all with the Van Ginkel concussion, is the neck injury. He had a neck injury. That's what kept him out for most of training camp. And so is there extra caution there because of that? Is there like any re-aggravation of those symptoms? He practiced all last week. Obviously, he played Monday night until that concussion, but that did pop into my mind of, is there any extra concern there?
Yeah, he's been dealing with stuff, and this is a guy who came back from the Liz Frank last year and had a tremendous year. So he's tough. We know he can play through stuff.
The entire summer helping his neighbors basically clean their houses out after all that flooding in Iowa when he was coming back from that injury.
Yeah.
Surgically repaired foot, and he's basically out working 12-hour days helping people clear basements and load up trucks, and then he would go to the weight room at his old high school and lift that night. So he does not lack for toughness.
No, Iowa tough, as Iowans will tell you. Yeah.
He is country strong for sure.
So if he's out, like you said, Emily, it's got to be kind of maybe an accumulation of things, maybe just a really severe head injury.
Yeah.
We'll keep tabs on those as the week progresses and we get some injury reports here. But let's kind of close the loop on an exciting Monday night. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit on yesterday's episode of Access Vikings. But Ben, what stood out to you most about what we heard today, either from Kevin O'Connell or J.J. McCarthy, just about what they saw in looking back at Monday night's game, and particularly the offense and its progression throughout the night?
Yeah, I mean, O'Connell talked a little bit early about some of the efficiency stuff that needs to improve, and he said kind of all 11 guys. There was a lot of it, I think, watching it back. You saw some sloppiness. I thought some of the route depth for things, and we saw Justin Jefferson drop passes that we don't typically see him drop. Yeah. The throw on the fourth down that Jefferson dropped, McCarthy probably put that in a little bit lower of a spot than I think he would have wanted. I think you saw some moments. Jefferson was slipping quite a bit more, so that field may have been a bigger issue. I mean, that's always a question at Soldier Field anyway. But some of the slipping coming out of breaks, I think there were spots that Josh Oliver, I think in the two-point conversion, tripped over somebody's feet. I think it was maybe Ryan Kelly's when he was coming back, when he's kind of coming across the formation. So just a lot of that kind of stuff that there were moments of sloppiness, which you'd expect in week one. But I thought it was interesting to hear O'Connell talk about that, and probably some things for McCarthy to change too. I asked him about what can you improve, and he talked a lot about just footwork and making sure that my depth is in the right spot and my throwing from a good platform. You know, all of those things that quarterbacks spend a lot of time trying to look at in detail. I think, you know, watching it back, he had some moments early on where probably taking a sack or trying to just get a few yards with his feet was not the worst thing to do. I think he did a good job of minimizing mistakes, with one very notable exception to that. But yeah, I think in a lot of spots the decision-making was not bad. It's just you probably have to get a little more confident and a little more precise, especially some of the things going on around him too. I mean, we don't see Adam Thielen drop balls like that very often. So there's things he can improve, but I think a lot of things for the rest of the offense to do more effectively too.
Kevin O'Connell kind of admitted to underestimating the Soldier Field crowd too.
Yeah.
Going into it, he said,
the anthem got him fired up.
He said after a great anthem, the crowd was fired up. He said it was a little louder than I anticipated, and so I think that affected the operation as well, just the noise.
So the backstory on that anthem, the guy that sang it, Dan Corneliuson, I think is the name, sings it at Blackhawks games. This is my 5 minutes I spent on the Wild Beat. I learned this. So Blackhawks games, if you heard it at all Monday night, where everybody's cheering and clapping during the anthem, it's like, aren't you supposed to just stand and be silent for this? That is a thing they do at Blackhawks games, where from the beginning to the end, people are going nuts, cheering. It's like just a Chicago thing. So if that seemed weird to anybody Monday night, I don't know how much of that got picked up on the broadcast. I heard a little bit of it coming back, but it was pretty noticeable live. I've been to a couple of games at the United Center where he's singing, and it is that scene. So that did, I think, have an effect of, and that flyover. I think I came back into the press box after doing radio right when it came over. That flyover was close and loud. 2 fighter jets coming over. So you don't typically think of those things as mattering for the atmosphere, but in that case, they probably did.
Yeah, and the press box at Soldier Field's made of 2x4s and cardboard, so we could feel the F-18s coming over the top there, and I'm sure everybody on the field felt that too. But the crowd was loud to begin, and then as soon as it started to slip, all the Bears fans were like, again.
Yeah, 3 minutes left. They're heading for the exits, and the Bears got it within 3. It was like,
they were already gone.
It was like you could have pressed a button. You just saw a lot of people flooding for the exits right after that.
Yeah, we should mention, though, too, before we move on to Harrison Smith. I don't think we talked about the fact that he spoke today. We heard from him in the locker room talking about his personal health matter that he's been dealing with. And he didn't have too much to say. We got rushed out of there because he had meetings he had to go to. But he said he's going to be all right. And he said, Ben, I think you had asked him, how long is it going to take you to ramp up? But he said not long.
Yeah, he said it's new doing it this way because he's never had to do it before. But it's just a matter of building up football conditioning and some of the stamina that you need to play possibly 65 snaps on Sunday night at US Bank Stadium. So I think some of it is just getting some of those things back, and he's been able to do some of that work in the last week. But I wouldn't think that takes terribly long. But, you're going to have to do a little bit of work. I mean, just knowing what I know about building endurance, I mean, they're going to do it differently through sprinting and just kind of getting used to how quickly can I sprint, how quickly can I recover. But it shouldn't take long before I think he's at least improved enough to play. I wouldn't expect he's going to be 100%. From a stamina perspective that quickly, but I think getting himself in position to play and have a role by Sunday night, I guess I'd be a little surprised if it's not at that point by then.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because they didn't practice last Friday. They have like an estimation of a walkthrough. He hadn't practiced until Saturday of last week.
Yes.
So it hasn't even been a week that he's returned to practice.
Yep.
So we'll see.
They were walking through on Wednesday too. So it'll be really Thursday, Friday this week, I think, will give us a better indication of what he's going to be able to do and how they're going to list him.
He did clarify that he had been around the facility. I mean, obviously, we had said that we hadn't seen him since early August, but he did say that he was around the facility just doing other things. It is a big place around here. Lots of other things you can be doing than being on the practice field. And he did say that he would expect to be back before that 4-week mark. Obviously, he was not placed on injured reserve, and that's when that would have come into effect. So, as you said, we'll wait through the rest of the week and see what Sunday night looks like.
And I think, we'll talk to Flores tomorrow. I think they need him because I thought Theo Jackson at times, the touchdown where Byron Murphy's looking behind him, like, what are you doing? There was the 30-yarder to DJ Moore in the second quarter where
confusion in coverage.
Theo seemed to be pretty far off on a double post. Like, it just seems sometimes where the Bears were kind of hunting for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Caleb Williams is more accurate on a number of those throws, that game is different because there was more – not full coverage busts where guys just were streaking wide open, but there was a lot of space. And I think a lot of decisions or a lot of confusion maybe of, is this my responsibility? How do I play in this zone? Where do I pick this guy up?
Yeah.
I think with Harrison Smith, especially with all the checks, he is responsible for communicating a lot of that and orienting a lot of people in coverage. So you have 2 new corners in this defense that have not played in it before, and then we'll see if Jeff Okudah is playing Sunday night or if we're going down the depth chart. But Harrison Smith does have that stabilizing presence in that defense that, like you said, I think is pretty important at this point, especially when you've got some new faces.
Let's go ahead and flip to Sunday night with the Falcons coming to town for the home debut. Obviously, last year, the talk when the Falcons were coming to town was Kirk Cousins. It is, again, quarterbacks this year, and it's a very similar conversation to Monday night in that Michael Penix Jr. is the quarterback out for the Falcons now. He was in that 2024 draft class alongside J.J. McCarthy, who said that obviously he has a lot of respect for him. They did off-season work together. They competed in that national championship game against each other in 2024. I wasn't here, and listeners might need some reminders. What was the Kevin O'Connell Vikings assessment on Michael Penix Jr. in that draft class?
I mean, I think they liked him. I never got the sense that they were they've been, you hear different things. I didn't think that they were like split between him and McCarthy. I think McCarthy was still the guy that they would have wanted in that next group. I mean, Drake May, we've said it a lot, but Drake May was the guy that they wanted the most. And then when they couldn't make the trade up for him, McCarthy became the pick. And if it had come to McCarthy and Penix, we would have a clearer answer to that question. If they'd both been on the board, we'd be able to tell that definitively. But no, I think McCarthy was the guy that they liked in that group beyond May and you have Daniels and Williams that weren't going to get there. Yeah, Bo Nix would have been I don't think is high on that list either. That was my sense of it, but again, we don't really have a complete answer to that question because they never had to put that into theory, or put that theory into practice, I should say, because the Falcons pulled the surprise of the draft that night and drafted Michael Penix 8th overall after signing Kirk Cousins to a $180 million contract.
And Kevin O'Connell was pretty effusive. He's always effusive about the quarterback they're facing, obviously, but I felt he went a step farther than he had to, talking about Penix being a guy who can create explosive plays, has a strong arm, accurate downfield, all those things. And you saw it. We've seen it since he took over for Kirk, why they wanted him. He's got a lot of the talent and that arm talent that they talk about that can take advantage of having Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, all that stuff. So this will be a much tougher test for the Vikings defense than if Kirk were still playing.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Penix is more dynamic, and we saw a lot of that in college when he was at Washington. The downfield stuff was a big part of his game there. That'll be a big part of what they try to do Sunday night as well, especially when Drake London has, I think, continued to progress and become an awfully effective wide receiver one for them. So, yeah, it is a tougher test, I think, in that regard. I still like the Vikings in this one at home, but when you talk about some of the defensive injuries that they are going to have to figure out this week, and Bijan Robinson is as dynamic a running back as you'll find, I think it is going to be a challenge for them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they defended the run pretty well on Monday night in Chicago, even though they played off quite a bit.
Yeah.
So their front six, front seven, they really leaned on those guys to defend it. But Atlanta's a different animal. Yeah, Bijan's not DeAndre Swift. No. He's much tougher of a guy to tackle. Kevin O'Connell brought up the touchdown Bijan scored where he said it was just a check down. The guy took it 60 yards to the house.
Like, he had 100 yards receiving in the game, I think.
I like DeAndre Swift, but he's probably not doing that too often. So I think if Cashman's out, like it sounds like he's going to be, it's going to be a long game for Eric Wilson, Ivan Pace, and those guys.
Well, and you think about a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, what he has done against the Vikings, where he has given them a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I would put this matchup a little more on that plane than I would DeAndre Swift.
We're not doing score predictions, but I do want us to do a little game prediction exercise. Doesn't have to be a hot take, but if you want it to be hot, it certainly can be. I would say my two
Apparently I gave my hot take yesterday when I compared McCarthy to Tom Brady in the
you did.
way he approaches it. I got asked about that on the radio. Apparently I may end up in the K-Fine Preposterous Statement tournament for that one. We'll see.
My two that I'll throw out there, neither of which is hot, but I just think coming off of Monday night, these are my big two takeaways. Is one, I do think J.J. McCarthy's going to look a lot more settled just from the start of the game. As much as they said coming in that he was ready and he's a gamer and he'd handle all that stuff, 609, 610 days between games is a long time to go. And I think he's just going to look a lot more settled at the start of this one. I also think they're going to use Jordan Mason earlier than the third drive of the game and a lot more than they did the other night, just because I think you saw the difference he can make. I think they'll continue to work Aaron Jones more into that receiving role where he does a mix of both but can be that threat downfield. He talked about that today. I think those would be my two kind of predictions for Sunday night.
Yeah, Jordan Mason looked great. I'm very curious. What was the total count? It was a 54-50 split. It was over 100 because they put those guys on the field at the same time a few times. So they love those guys. They're going to keep using them in a 1-2 punch. But, Ben, do you think Jordan might be the 1A?
Well, I think he's what I think we're going to see happen is a little more of what we saw on Monday night where he is getting maybe more of the handoffs. Aaron Jones, I think one of the things I would look for, and I asked him about this quite a bit today. He's going to write about it for the newsletter on Friday. But Aaron Jones being more of a wide receiver threat, more of a vertical threat. I think we're going to see more of that. I mean, I think that we saw on the wheel route from the backfield, but there are times where they are lining him out wide. I mean, the interception that McCarthy threw, the pick six, Jones was lined out wide, and they brought him in for extra protection when they decided to go max protect with Tim Jones as a chipper on that as well. So I think we will see Aaron Jones in more of that role. The one I will say for a prediction, Javon Hargrave had a really impressive night on Monday. I think he plays a big role in this game. The Falcons have a new center. Drew Dahlman is now in Atlanta, or now in Chicago, previously in Atlanta. So new pieces on that offensive line. I think Hargrave plays a big role with that crowd being loud, and maybe you have that extra half second of time where offense is a little slow coming off the ball because they don't know exactly what the snap count is if it's loud. Javon Hargrave, I think, plays a big role in this game. And then I think just as we look forward to what this offense will look like, I expect McCarthy's probably a little more wide open. It's not going to be what it has been in the past, but he did look better when he was playing more of a drop-back game, I thought, late on Monday night against the Bears. I think, kind of like what you're saying, Emily, I think the governor gets taken off a little bit on the offense. I think they start to push the ball a little bit more often.
I was impressed that Kevin O'Connell stuck with the run game at the end when they needed to grind out clock. I was thinking, is he going to actually stick with this? And they did. The 4.5-minute drive for the final touchdown, like that was a concerted effort to waste that clock and run the ball, and they did. And Mason was great in those moments, which maybe earns him some more run. I guess my prediction is going to be, I think this is going to be a tougher test on the Vikings defense than maybe people think. We just talked about why Penix is good, why they think he's good. So maybe not more than we think, but more than the public might think. Because you said it earlier, Ben, if Caleb Williams were just a tad more accurate, that is a completely different game.
They may not come back in that case.
Yeah, ESPN had a stat where 44% in the second half off-target throws and 29% overall for the entire game. Even when he had his 10 completions to start the game, he had a third down screen that went nowhere because he threw it so low and away from Odunze, he had to grab it and basically fall over. Like, even in the first half, he wasn't accurate. Penix is known to have pinpoint precision accuracy on his passes. He's just not as mobile.
Right.
I asked Dallas Turner today, are you guys looking forward to playing Penix because he's not as mobile? And Dallas is like, well, he can still kind of push it downfield. Like, I don't know about looking forward to. This is a different challenge. And so they're expecting to have a different rush plan. They're expecting to have, obviously, a different test downfield. And if Cashman ain't there, who's covering Kyle Pitts? If Harrison Smith isn't there, who's covering Darnell Mooney downfield? And, of course, Drake London, as you mentioned, a fantastic possession threat. The Vikings might be in for a little bit more of a shootout that necessitates pushing it downfield.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great point. This is an Atlanta team that has still not probably an elite collection of weapons, but Bijan Robinson changes so many things. I think Kyle Pitts has not turned into the player that they certainly thought he was going to be when they drafted him. But whether it's Robinson, Pitts still be able to do some things, and Drake London, I think there is enough talent to make this more of a question, especially if those defensive injuries end up being as significant as they look, at least early in the week, like they could be.
Because it's Wednesday, and we're looking at the possibility of no Harrison Smith, no Andrew Van Ginkel, and no Blake Cashman.
Yeah, those are significant losses, especially as you're talking about the middle of your defense and what you do about Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
Fan noise was a big commentary piece today during all of the people we talked to. One, do you think Kirk Cousins gets booed again, even though he will not be playing? He got booed a lot last year when he showed up, did play that game. Now that he's not playing, do you think people are a little bit more like, oh, that's our old buddy Kirk?
That's a great question.
That's a good, I wonder if people feel bad for him.
Let us know in the comments.
Because you're happy, if you're a Viking fan, you're happy with what you got. Yeah. You just saw your guy do the thing. So it's like, thanks, Kirk, for taking the money and leaving, right?
Right. Yeah, I would think that would be the reaction. I mean, that was very much how it went with Sam Darnold last year. I mean, that game was the one where I think they put Darnold on
with the MVP chant.
The MVP chant, and they put Darnold on the scoreboard, and Darnold is up waving the towel around.
That's right, I forgot.
And Jefferson is all fired up. I mean, that game was. They wouldn't say it afterwards, and I don't think you'll ever get them to say it publicly because there's a lot of people in this building that still have pretty strong feelings about Kirk Cousins. Kevin O'Connell and Kirk Cousins have good relationships still. But I think that day was a kind of moment of vindication for the Vikings that, we knew what we were doing. And Sam Darnold obviously had the year that he had. I don't know that he gets booed. I would imagine that they'll put him on the scoreboard at least once on Sunday night. Maybe there may be some boos, but I don't know that will be something where we see every time he drops back that he's getting booed like he did last year.
I have to imagine there's just an element of thanks for the memories, and appreciation for what he did, knowing that your franchise, if you're a Vikings fan, is in pretty good hands right now.
Well, I'll put it this way. I mean, we're however many minutes into this podcast, we're mentioning his name for the first time.
Yeah.
Last year,
it's different.
That was the whole story. I mean, I went down to Atlanta to do a story on Kirk Cousins last year, and this time I'm like, oh, yeah. I guess he'll be here too.
You were down in Atlanta, and so that podcast was the first Access Vikings podcast that I did.
Persona non grata in Atlanta.
I did not go down to Atlanta this time.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you watch a practice anyway.
They would not let me watch practice. That is true. They
spy.
Practice
spy.
only to local media for fear of out of town espionage because people who are not on the payroll of the teams they cover are nonetheless going to go back and tell the said team everything they saw apparently was the concern.
Oh, that's funny. Good times.
Yeah.
Good times, good times. Well, we will do another mailbag episode on Friday. Drop us your comments on any of our social media channels, or the email is
accessvikings@startribune.com.
There we go. You can email questions there too if you feel like the Twitter word count or the X word count limit is not enough for your questions.
I'm gonna call it Twitter.
So that episode's going to be Friday. We will do a post-game episode Sunday night too. U.S. Bank Stadium lights should not turn out on us as the ones at Soldier Field did. So we will plan on doing that one from there and get it up a little faster for you guys. But that's all we have for today.